Welcome back to the Ball Brad Show. What we're covering right now is China gives up. Xi Jinping has lost the trade war with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has them in a chokehold, and the Chinese government is falling apart, not just with their mortgage crisis, not just with the banks failing over there in China, but also with factories closing and they're losing the trade war. Here we go.
Their product. We don't want their product unless they're going to be fair with us.
Land sales measures, foreign investment data, unemployment indicators have gone dark. Even official soy sauce production reports are gone.
China's doing very poorly right now. We're going to put very fair numbers down and we're going to say, here's what we want and congratulations, we have a deal. And they'll either say great or they'll say not good.
It seems like Xi Jinping is giving up, and that's because China is losing this war.
Oh,
After
yeah.
all the big talk about China will not negotiate unless the US lifts all the tariffs, it seems China is willing to negotiate. US just announced that the negotiations are taking place next week, and US is not lifting any tariffs until negotiations are done. And the
That's how
reason
it's
behind
done.
China surrendering is simple. Chinese economy is crashing, and it's crashing fast.
Boom!
In fact, things have gotten so bad that just yesterday CCP announced that it will stop publishing economic data about China's economy. So you guys tell me, do you know of any government in the world that will stop publishing data that was good? I don't think so. The data
But I was told they're doing fine. No, I watch the media every day. They say China's really giving it to us. We're eating China's lunch. I don't think so. I don't think so. And Business Basics here is proving us correct in terms of China is feeling the pressure of Donald Trump's boot on their face. And Xi's like, get it off of me. Oh.
data is becoming so bad that CCP does not want to admit it to the world. And
No,
that's
they
why
don't.
they have stopped publishing it, and that's why a day later they have reached out for negotiations. Here we have more details.
The Chinese technocrats understand that we use underlying data to draw questions about their headline gross domestic product numbers. So, for instance, we're seeing a lot of evidence that suggests that their 5.4% report of growth in Q1 can't be true.
There you go.
And now, as President Trump said, the Chinese economy is contracting. We saw that from the price data for March and February. We also saw it in the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index for April, which clearly showed factory activity on the downswing. So, yes, the Chinese...
I'm sorry, did he say factory on the downswing where they're having to sell off machinery just to pay their bills? Where they're not even paying their own employees when they close down their factories right now because they're not producing anything? They're in a world of hurt. They're in a world of pain over there in China.
Regime does not want us to know what's going on.
Of course they don't.
And they're going to continue to restrict information to us. Well, first of all, there are factory closures. China can't sell to the global south or to anybody else
There
the
you
products
go.
that it would otherwise have sold to the U.S. because Trump's tariffs at their current rates keep many Chinese products out of our country. And that means these export-oriented factories, especially those in the southern portion
They're
of the
screwed.
country, they have been closing. They've been in trouble for a couple of years now, and they certainly are at a point where they can't continue. This is something that is weakening Xi Jinping's hold on power. Remember, he's got near total accountability because he's taken power from everybody else. And that means he's being blamed for the tariff war, as the Chinese call it. And that means his grip, I think, is now weakening. He's not the all-powerful leader that he was pre-COVID.
As many of you guys may know, we've been calling this ever since this trade war started, that China is gonna bend the knee because their economy cannot afford to
Not only bend the knee, but they're going to be kissing the ring of Donald Trump, just like Mexico did, just like Canada did, just like Colombia did. Bend the knee, kiss Daddy Trump's ring. Just kiss it, Trudeau. Kiss it, Mark Carney. She's next.
continue this trade war, and this is exactly why CCP bots target our videos, because they expose the truth about the CCP. So if you guys can help us out a little bit, take a second and hit that like and subscribe button down below. It truly does help us out with the algorithm and fighting the CCP bots.
There we go.
But let's look at the details of what exactly China is trying to hide. Not long ago, anyone could comb through a wide range of official data from China. Then it started to disappear. Again, we've been covering how the youth unemployment data disappeared back in 2023, and ever since then we can check the secondary data points and realize that youth unemployment in China has only gone up. Land sales measures, foreign investment data and unemployment indicators have gone dark in recent years. Data on cremation and a business confidence index have been cut off. Even official soy sauce production reports are gone. In all, Chinese officials have stopped publishing hundreds of data points once used by researchers and investors. In most cases, Chinese authorities haven't given any reason for ending or withholding data, but the missing numbers have come as the world's second biggest economy has stumbled under the weight of excessive debt, a crumbling real estate market, and other troubles, spurring heavy-handed efforts by the authority to control the narrative. And I just want to show you guys some of the data that China is not publishing anymore, and we can clearly...
Folks, if you're driving right now, pull over. If you're sitting down, double buckle up because it's about to get wild. How bad is China's economy? Let's find out.
See a trend in this data before they disappear, so we can assume why CCP is hiding the data. Here we have the national land sales, and you can see over the last 20 years the data has been down, and suddenly they just stopped publishing it. Here's another example: the number of people in urban areas who received unemployment insurance benefits. This data has been going up, and then suddenly the data disappears. Again, this is something, if it's going up, you can tell the economy is not doing good, because China cannot have unemployment numbers go up all the while GDP is rising. And this next chart is exactly that. China's official GDP has been rising exactly at CCP's expectations or well above it. In fact, just a few weeks ago, we got China's Q1 GDP figures, and surprise, surprise, the Chinese GDP grew at 5.4%, beating the expectations that CCP had set at the start of the quarter, which was at 5.1%. But to me, this doesn't seem like an economy that's growing if they're trying to hide all the data. Like I said at the start of the video.
Yeah, doesn't make sense. Sounds like they're cooking the books again, just like they did with their mortgage industry.
I don't know a single politician in the world, a single dictator in the world who would hide figures that put a good light on its economy. Usually dictators hide figures when it doesn't apply with the narrative they're trying to push. This is exactly why it's important videos like these reach more and more people. And this is exactly why I know it's annoying, and I see your guys' comments down below, but your likes and subscribes literally do help us out. It's important. Because CCP censorship is so intrusive that even in China, a prominent economist said that CCP may be lying about the GDP figure. Guess what happened to that economist?
He's gone.
China's leader Xi Jinping ordered Gao to be disciplined, and he has been banned from speaking publicly for an unspecified period.
See, that's how China rolls. You say something they don't like, you disappear, they shut you up, they stop producing data, they manipulate things. But the public is rising up against the government. The public is turning to protest, folks. Xi is losing his grip on the narrative over there in China. And you want who's rubbing the shoulders of Xi right now? Our mainstream media, because they're not willing to get this information out to you, which is why channel like mine, Business Basics, and others are getting it out to the American people, because you need to see the truth of what actually going on in China.
So this makes you question, what exactly did this economist said publicly? He said this on public national TV or the state TV in China. Here's what he said.
Yeah, this was a story that I was actually quite taken aback by when I was reading it. And you'll understand why when I get to his comments in a bit. But this is a prominent economist. He is chief economist of SDIC Securities, a state-owned company. He has advised top officials and regulators before. He said that consumption growth is stronger in provinces with older population, and it's weaker in provinces with younger population. And he said this is a bit counterintuitive. It might be a bit hard to accept, but he says this can be summarized into 3 phrases. Older people are full of vibrancy, younger people...
Or 3 words, we are screwed! Get out of here!
...are lifeless, and middle-aged people have nothing to live for. So it's very sobering comments there that we rarely hear in the public discourse in China, because this is an environment where we know analysts have been censoring themselves, perhaps avoiding using words like deflation, because officials have been calling for a more positive narrative around the economy. And he goes on to justify his thesis. He said that older people are spending because they're getting regular pension, but younger people, their expectations on income is diminishing diminishing, so they're holding that back. And he also said that the job market is worse than what the official data says. He estimates that there are about 47 million migrant laborers who have left the cities, gone back to their home provinces because they can't get jobs in the cities, and they have basically disappeared from the data because the data only captures unemployment in urban areas. So when they left the urban areas, they're no longer in the data. He also said that GDP is overcounted by 3 percentage points a year in the past 3 years. Cumulatively, he said, it's overcounted by 10 percentage points over the past 3 years. This is based on his analysis compared.
Sounds like China might have negative GDP then, doesn't it?
Growth data versus investment, consumption, and labor force data.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but to me, it didn't seem like that economist hated CCP or hated China. I think what he was really doing was providing constructive criticism so the government could improve the economy for the people it's supposed to serve. But
by the way, this isn't old news, just a heads up. This is happening this year in 2025. January through April data is everything you're being provided with right now.
guess what? Xi Jinping isn't interested in improving the Chinese economy or learning from mistakes. Only thing he's interested in is keeping his power, and that's exactly why this economist, even though he was well-intentioned, faced harsh punishment for just speaking freely. Unfortunately for Xi though, ever since this trade war started, it seems that the Chinese economy has gotten so bad that he cannot ignore it anymore, and that's exactly why he has opened up the negotiations with the United States. China just cannot survive without the US market. Now, we'll get into the details of these negotiations in just a second, but before that, as you guys know, we have recently increased the number.
All right, you increased your uploads, I get it. Today's sponsor, we're going past it. I appreciate your sponsorship, but we got to get to the important stuff here.
Mindset going into them and why China came to the table.
Well, I think that this is what we're going to do in Switzerland is we've agreed to talk. Then on Saturday and Sunday, we will agree what we're going to talk about. My sense is that this will be about de-escalation, not about the big trade deal. But we've got to de-escalate before we can move forward.
Well, they said that they would not talk unless the reciprocal trade tariff of 145% was removed.
Please.
Would it be likely that you would be able to go back to the president and say, to show good faith, we could drop this down in the interim to 50%? Could that be in the cards?
Laura, I'm not going to negotiate. You're on TV. You're one of the most popular anchors in the world, so I'm not going to give away our strategy. Look, everything's on the table. It's up to the president at the end of the day. The president has said that he's happy just to give all countries a number if the negotiations don't go well. And that's what we're doing with the other 17 important trading partners is, look, you can negotiate in good faith, you can come with your A game, or President Trump is happy to ratchet the number back up to your April 2nd number. If you don't want to decrease your tariffs, your non-tariff trade barriers, the currency manipulation, and subsidies of labor and industry.
Talking about China.
The situation is playing out pretty similar to how 2018 negotiations went. You see, back in 2018, when Trump put on tariffs on China, what China did at first was basically say, we're not going to negotiate with the United States unless the US takes off all the tariffs that they put on. Then, just after a month of that statement, Chinese officials were here in the United States negotiating a trade deal. But one thing they did do during the negotiations was just drag it out as much as possible. So trade deal was signed, I think, late 2019, and then
Trump hinted at this during the Oval Office with the trade deal that's being discussed with the United Kingdom today during that bombshell release, that historic trade deal with the United Kingdom. He mentioned how he was in talks and deals with China in his first term, and then they weren't really able to come to a significant deal. The hope is that they can come to a significant deal this time, and I think they're going to, because Xi is feeling the pressure, not just from his economy that's in turmoil, but also from his own people that are now protesting the streets, and that's being hindered and not shown to the American people nor the rest of the world, because when videos are being shown, they're having YouTube and other big tech companies take it and pull it down, or the Chinese government is pulling it down itself.
And in 2020, we had a change of administration. China was hoping that the next president would take it easy on China, but unfortunately for Xi Jinping, that's not exactly how things went. In fact, former President Biden doubled down on Trump's tariff and introduced new ones. And now that Trump is back, the tariff war is in full swing, and it looks like China is repeating the same playbook. First, they said they will not negotiate, but now they're willing to negotiate. But I suspect they'll try to do the same thing. Well, they will drag out the negotiations as much as possible.
They're lost.
Just so they can waste everyone's time and not actually produce any meaningful change to the Chinese behavior. Xi has offered to let low-level guys start negotiating, but Trump is insisting that Xi get on the phone and negotiate. That's why US and China aren't even really talking about this. So let me explain. Xi is doing a couple of things that are standard Chinese negotiating tactics. First, he's playing for time. He's offered, you remove the tariffs, we start negotiating. He wants to drag this out until the next guy. Trump probably recognizes this from his first goat rodeo and isn't buying into the delay and extend tactics. Remember, the 2020 Phase 1 trade agreement was done near the end of Trump's first term, even though they had been negotiating almost the entire time. He has probably learned his lesson.
And again, he has learned his lesson because Trump brought this exact thing up in the Oval Office today, again, when discussing the trade deal with the United Kingdom. The historic, the biggest, the best deal that's been done.
Second, Xi wants to, what we call in China world, salami slice it. You start out with the salami and you work your way through various stages of negotiations, and at every step, your new-faced counterparty demands just one slice. So, by the time you get to the signing, you don't actually have any of the salami left. Xi and China run this scam all the time. Again, I strongly suspect Trump has learned his lesson and exactly why he's refusing to do anything unless Xi gets on the phone and makes the deal. There are other reasons, but start here. Now, another thing Trump has learned from his first time when he negotiated with China was how China avoids these tariffs. And that's exactly why we slapped on tariffs on almost every single country, and then we paused them while we negotiated with all these nations. And one of the negotiating conditions we have is no nation can help China avoid US tariffs, because this is a common tactic China has been using ever since the first tariff war started. And what they would do is they would use other countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, Mexico, and Canada to ship stuff into the United States and avoid the tariffs that we placed on Chinese goods.
Gee, Jeff, because we are live right now. Jeff, doesn't that sound very familiar to what I brought up to those scumbags in TikTok Live? When I said that, hey, there's a chance that China might use some of these islands or some of these other countries as a way to get around the tariffs that was imposed on them. And they all said I was crazy. They all said I was ludicrous for this idea. And I said, it might just be easier to put a blanket sweep in tariffs on all these islands and all these countries so that China isn't able to do something like this. And it was the most outlandish thing they could ever hear. That's crazy. Trump didn't think about this. Maybe he did. Maybe he did think about it, and you didn't think that he would actually do something like this. Bets with the $50. Where you coming? Holy lordy, girly. Bets with the $50. We don't need China at all. You're damn right. That's a salute right there with the $50. Thank you. Holy lordy.
In fact, even now, Chinese exporters are stepping up efforts to avoid US tariffs by shipping their goods via third countries to conceal their true origin. They're trying to move as much merchandise as they can before other countries start signing the trade deal. Chinese social media platforms are awash with adverts offering place of origin washing, while an inflow of goods from China.
Pat has become a monthly supporter over at Rumble. You guys are going bonkers for Dark MAGA. Thank you so much for your support. God bless you guys. You're true American patriots, all of you. Thank you. I'm feeling the love right now.
Has raised alarms in neighboring countries wary of becoming staging posts for trade actually destined for the US. The growing use of tactics underlines exporters' fears that new tariffs of up to 145% on Chinese goods will deprive them of access to one of the most important markets.
There you go.
The tariff is too high, but we can sell the goods to neighboring countries and then neighboring countries sell them to the US.
No, you can't.
And it will reduce.
Nope.
US trade laws require goods to undergo substantial transformation in a country, usually including processing or manufacturing that adds significant value to qualify as originating there for tariff purpose.
And this would be the reason as to why they wouldn't be able to use some islands to get this product to the United States without a tariff. So let me explain really quickly and then we'll continue the video. There was that Penguin Island that was just filled with a bunch of bird doo-doo and there was no civilization on it. And you wouldn't be able to just say, hey, I'm going to park some stuff here and then I'm going to offshore it again and bring it to the United States using a middle island as kind of a mediator between the two countries, saying, hey, well, this didn't come from China. This came from Penguin Island. So since you didn't have a tariff on it, sorry, no can do. Now, China has workarounds on this, but you could, in theory, meet all the standards of what would need to be done on those islands. They built a giant island in the South China Sea, folks. Don't say the Chinese aren't capable of doing this. Now, would they? I don't know. They're willing to build manufacturing in Bangladesh, Vietnam, and all these other countries. But let's let them continue nonetheless. So this would be the case in which why they wouldn't be able to utilize those islands to get around Donald Trump's tariffs.
Adverts on social media platforms such as RedNote offer to help exporters ship goods to countries such as Malaysia, where they will be issued with new certificate of origin and then sent to the US. An advert posted on RedNote by Ruby Third Country Transshipment this week said, the US has imposed tariffs on Chinese products, transit through Malaysia to transform into Southeast Asian goods. The US has limits on Chinese wooden flooring and tableware. Wash the origin in Malaysia for smooth customs clearance.
And a patron in the chat, Jeff, says it's possible that it would be cheaper for China to pay for freight costs to ship to another country and then sell to America to avoid the tariffs. That is 100% correct. And that's what they're kind of mentioning right here.
Well, unfortunately for China, other countries are cracking down, and it's expected to only pick up as the trade deals are signed. South Korea's customs agency had found foreign products worth $21 million with falsified countries of origin in the first quarter of this year, most of them coming from China and almost all destined for the US. Vietnam's Industry and Trade Ministry has called on local trade associations, exporters, and manufacturers to strengthen checks on origins of raw materials and input goods to prevent the issuing of counterfeit certificates. Thailand's Foreign Minister Department has also unveiled measures to tighten origin checks on products bound for the US in order to prevent tariff evasion.
There you go.
Some logistic companies could ship goods from China to Port Klang in Malaysia, from where they could move items into local containers and change their tags and packaging. The companies have connections with factories in Malaysia that could help issue the certificates of origin. The Malaysian customs are not very strict.
They're trying to cheat the
origin
system.
Washing was one of the two main methods being employed to avoid Trump's new levies. The other was mixing high-cost items with cheaper goods so exporters could falsely claim a lower overall cost of shipments. The owner of consumer goods manufacturer based in China said two domestic industries association had introduced him to intermediaries who offered a gray area tariff workaround. Basically, I only ship to a Chinese port, they take it from there. The intermediary had offered to arrange the workaround for just 5 yuan, 70 cents per kilogram shipped.
Wow.
These agencies said small and medium-sized enterprises like us can weather the tariff hit better because there's always gray areas. I hope it's true. The US is a big market. I don't want to lose it. Now, this is something.
Correct. It's the biggest market. We're the only people on the face of the earth that can consume as much as we actually do. Nobody's comparable to us. In the same way, consuming, Pat is allowing me to consume 5 of his dollars. Don't trust China. China's bleep hole. Thank you, dude, for the $5. Thank you for always supporting the Bald Brad Show. Appreciate you. And thank you for joining Rumble Premium. Appreciate that as well.
We have talked about on our live streams that we do every day on 4 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube. So if you guys want to ever join in and join the conversation, just stop by at 4 p.m. Eastern every single day. Now, this is something we did talk about, and basically think about it. If you're a Chinese manufacturer, especially if you're a small or medium-sized manufacturer, and you have two options. Either you do something illegal, like breaking the tariff law that US has, or you go out of business. Your family probably wouldn't have food to eat, your family wouldn't have income, and your employees will not get their paycheck.
And that is exactly what is happening.
Option are you picking? Now, I'm not talking about the CCP. I'm talking about the Chinese people who own these factories. What would they do? And I think most of us can agree that most of the Chinese factory owners will choose to do something illegal. That just seems like the more likely option, at least to me. And this is exactly why we need other countries on board, because we cannot let Chinese companies use other countries to avoid US tariffs.
Correct.
That defeats the whole purpose of the negotiations that are going on later this week.
And it stops the pressure. It alleviates some of the pressure that's actually on China, and that circumvents what's actually happening, but leave it up to the Chinese to always cheat. This is what they do. They have You want a case in point? Intellectual property. They steal $1 trillion a year, I think it is, of intellectual property from American people. That's messed up. So rather than innovate things themselves, they just steal it. Why bother thinking? Why bother actually producing something of real importance? We'll just steal it from everybody.
Xi Jinping is under a lot of pressure, and if we can make sure that he doesn't have a way out, he will have to come to a negotiating table and negotiate a fair deal. And this is exactly why we need other countries on board. We are not really offering them anything bad. We're just saying, hey, you should put your self-interest over the Chinese company's self-interest, over the CCP's self-interest. Because if these countries help Chinese companies avoid US tariffs, guess what? Their economies will suffer because they'll get hit with a higher tariff just because they were helping CCP. Now, other leaders...
You would have to increase their tariff on them. That way they're not able to work around the tariff that was already imposed on China. So meaning China, in a nutshell, wouldn't be able to get the workaround either. And they would be shooting themselves in their own foot because if they weren't willing to help the Chinese out in the first place, they never would have got that tariff. So they're trying to help the Chinese for no reason. You're only going to hurt yourself.
Can see how bad the Chinese economy is suffering right now, and they clearly don't want that for their citizens. And that's exactly why more and more countries are agreeing to the US demands. Here we have just one clip of a Chinese mall owner, or I guess a shop owner in a mall, showing how badly the spending has gone down ever since the US tariffs have been announced.
There were 3 to 4 million units here. A bit further down there were at least 7 to 8 million, and in total, this whole factory site had tens of millions invested. Now, it's all gone to waste. It's completely deserted, not even a rat crossing the street. This place was once something the rich people in Shenzhen fought tooth and nail to get a piece of, what they called a wealth hub. Now it's just the biggest joke, the biggest flop, the deepest regret. Look, nothing but ruins as far as the eye can see. The first floor, second floor, all the way up to the 6th floor, everything is abandoned, brothers. Back then, this was promoted as the biggest commercial city in South China, claiming to integrate every type of marketplace and business hub. What you're seeing now is a raw, brutal reality of Shenzhen's situation. Do you know how big this place is? Over 1 million square meters, equivalent to more than 1,000 acres. Tens of thousands of owners bought into this place, and now it's just a giant piece of useless land. 10 years ago, this place was bustling.
Whoa!
It was truly lively. Even now, the faded advertising panels you see have been hanging here since 10 years ago. All the businesses have collapsed and fled. The entire factory complex is now empty. Do you know where this is? If you do, leave a comment. Once a commercial complex like this gets divided up and sold to individual owners, it becomes almost impossible to run properly again because it loses the ability to survive independently. Think about those commercial complexes that were popular 10 years ago. How many of them are still operating today? Aren't most of them dead now? Places like this, brothers, there's no point looking anymore. It's beyond saving. So if you're still thinking about investing in wholesale markets, you really need to keep your eyes wide open. 80% of wholesale complexes in Shenzhen are total scams.
Now China knows only way they can win this trade war is by making sure the US backs down. And the way they can do that is by brainwashing US citizens. So what are they doing? They're pushing propaganda straight to US citizens who are using the Chinese app TikTok. And
our own mainstream media is willing to shill for them. Our own mainstream media is willing to cripple America for the sake of China. It's crazy.
The goal of this propaganda is simple. Get the public opinion against this tariff war, so there's a political pressure on the current administration to back down. Here's just one piece of propaganda that's going viral on TikTok. Unfortunately for CCP though, we have fellow YouTuber Circumventing exposing their propaganda.
Here we go.
But first, here's the clip.
Now, we just got done showing you in a video the mortgage crisis that's going on in China. Does this look like a mortgage crisis that's happening in China? I don't think so. It's propaganda is what it is. They have complexes completely empty. They have entire skyscrapers completely empty, not even renovated. This is all propaganda. It's all a joke. They're making it seem like everything's fine there, luxurious. It's not. They don't know what to do. They are crippled, folks. They are absolutely crippled. By the way, beautiful complex. But I'd be curious if anybody's actually living there.
Now, the video caption calls this next level affordable housing in China's Shenzhen area. Well, let's find out how affordable this is exactly. So the building is called SCT, located in Shenzhen, and the apartment you shared cost $3.3 million US dollars. Wow, really next level affordability. Apartments in that building go up to 5.5 million US dollars. Next level affordable, I don't know if I can say that.
You cannot.
On the high end, average salary in China is 16K USD a year. Who can afford this? In fact, 600 million people in China still make less than $5 a year. I don't think they can ever dream of affording a 3.3 million US dollar apartment. It's not next level affordability at all.
Nope.
But this is going viral on TikTok, and the US audience is just eating it up.
I'm sure
China
they are.
is
It's a bunch of
selling a
idiots.
fake lie, and
We're a bunch of dum-dums.
nothing about it. This is exactly why I think the Trump administration deserves some criticism when it comes to their actions on TikTok. Because they have done a lot of things good when it relates to China, but when it comes to TikTok, they have dropped the ball every single month. We have a law passed. The law has been passed through Congress and signed by the president.
He makes a point.
It's officially a law. Why are we extending the TikTok ban every 90 days? It doesn't make sense. We know China is weaponizing TikTok against the US to gain an advantage, and we just let them do it. In fact, we're helping them. TikTok should be banned in the United States, but it's still going every single day. And every single day we get reports about how Trump wants to extend it even more. He wants to extend it until we have a sale. China realizes that we really want a sale, and that's why they don't want to negotiate. As Trump said in the art of the deal, you have to be willing to walk away from the deal if you really want to win. And China knows we're not willing to walk away, and that's why they're winning the TikTok negotiations. Here's more details.
TikTok's algorithm is currently suppressing content critical of the CCP, boosting pro-CCP content, and also actively weaponizing TikTok in order to undermine Trump's trade war.
It's true.
So if he's worried about propaganda and messaging, then he should probably stop postponing the implementation of the TikTok ban in the United States, forcing TikTok to sell. They are literally undermining his own trade agenda. According to NCRI, following President Trump's April 2025 tariffs on Chinese imports, this is realityslaststand.com reporting, TikTok was suddenly flooded with well-produced videos telling Americans to cut out the middleman and buy straight from Chinese sellers. What they don't show is how this effort hides the product's true origin. Sellers use shady tricks like routing shipments through third countries and setting up shell companies to dodge tariffs. Many packages also are mislabeled to sneak through customs. According to the Network Contagion Research Institute, this is all part of a coordinated CCP effort called the Shopping in China campaign. It is not.
And that's exactly what it is. They're manipulating everything. And I think it is true that Donald Trump, laws are on the books. You're supposed to execute the laws that are on the books. Congress did say, hey, TikTok should be banned. But I'm more curious on not necessarily the TikTok ban, but do you think China is feeling the pressure of these tariffs? Do you think people are protesting in the streets? Do you think people are losing their jobs? Do you think Donald Trump has the upper hand, is going to make Xi bend the knee and kiss the ring? Let me know in the comment section below. Appreciate you, Patriots.